So the next speaker we have is Aidan Mitchell. And Aidan is with Arrow. So in my embedded years, I was familiar with them. But my colleagues, we were walking around the floor, and they were like, what is Arrow? So another example of an old industrial era company founded in 1935 and went public in 1947. So they have, their core infrastructure. And I think companies who are looking to enter the industrial IoT, there are companies like this that have the relationships and play a pivotal role. We may not realize it. So with that, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Aidan Mitchell from Arrow.
Hi, good morning. Say hello to your new coworker. Well, maybe. Depends what industry you're in, and it's certainly coming. Might not be around the corner, but it's coming pretty fast. We've been on a journey around IoT. You heard the prior speaker speaking about SCADA and what went on through factory automation and machine to machine. We've been on this journey. We've just put this wrapper around it because really IoT's become a movement. And it's become a business movement. This is all about driving efficiency in operations and automation for better quality, new services for experience, and how you're going to change the business model. But I wanted to spend some time today to let you know the branches that are coming off IoT pretty quick. We're growing a tree of opportunity here. And Arrow has been a company that's been working with companies for a very long time. In the introduction, it was mentioned we were founded in 1935. We've been there through the industrial growth. And we're now shifting into where businesses are really driving big expectations out of technology. Very big expectations, linked to revenue and bottom line. And as that's going, it's driving some brave new things in the areas of robotics and artificial intelligence. And I'm going to give you a sense of where the ingredients are forming really fast and what some companies are up to, our customers are up to today in this space. But there's also a lot of pop culture forming around IoT. And if you read the books by Martin Ford and Johansson and McAfee, they're going to scare you into a little bit, oh boy, technology is bringing big economic and social change. It is. But I also think there's no escaping, and they bring this conclusion too, that business is driving this. Big business is driving this for a reason. And they point out very clearly that they view we're on an exponential wave of technology deployment, and that there is going to be an increasing separation between productivity and efficiency that's increasing and where real wages are going to go. The gap is widening. But the jobs of today are going to look very different in the future. And the reality of that is, and I don't know if you're all a big Arthur C. Clarke fan like I am, but I love some of his sci-fi movies. But this quote, for me, underpins what technology is all about. It's great when it's invisible. And great technology is about bringing great experiences and efficiency and quality to what you do, great outcomes. And it should disappear into the background. IoT is making it easier for technology to disappear in the background. And it's becoming pervasive. And I know it's very real when the jobs show up. This is from the Denver Business Journal. We're headquartered in Colorado. And it's right from the beginning of this year. And it is a survey of the tech job demand in Colorado and where those jobs have shifted to, and what are those high demand roles that they're struggling to fill. And what's clear in this is, first of all, half of these jobs did not exist a decade ago. They're now the most highly paid jobs that are out there in the tech sector in Colorado. The wages are probably a little bit lower than here in Silicon Valley. But if you take a look at what's happening, it's all about data, it's all around mobility, it's all about user interface and experience, and it is software-centric. Security is going to be the next big wave that's coming right after this. It's just going to probably take a couple of events, maybe a little bit more severe than the Furby, but you know, it's going to come. And if you take a look at the chain that we see now happening with the customers and partners we're working with, look, it's very clear we're seeing connected proliferation. And we're seeing sensor nodes deploy dramatically. And we're starting to get into what the knowledge-driven enterprise looks like. But you know, there's going to be a lot of shakeout and learning still to come. We've got to have a couple of cycles of having those big data experts get in there and really mine what's going to be important to the outcome for that enterprise. But it is going to bring a lot more automation with it. And it's going to bring that efficiency. And as it's learning from the outcomes, either from the factory floor or how you're interfacing with the consumer on a retail shelf, it's going to start continuing to drive predictive learning and recommendations about what to do and not to do as an enterprise. And automation is going to beget robotics. On my way here this morning, you know, I'm looking at some of the newspaper headlines, and very top of the list was, would you trust a robot to conduct your surgery? And it goes into, we've had Da Vinci around in robotics for some time for assisted surgery. There's now robots that are being deployed that's doing surgery unassisted, but with supervision. I mean, that's mind-boggling how fast this is coming. And there are centers of this development that are coming right here in the United States, but they're not all in Silicon Valley, and I'll speak a little bit to what's happening around. And as we get to this automated economy, we are also seeing business models change. We're seeing in our customer base a dramatic move to flexibility and having conversations with their end customers around capitalized solutions versus lease and variable solutions. Subscription is coming fast, and connectivity is bringing a per-use environment. And if you're not thinking as a company about how your customers are using your product, the volume of throughput that's going through that, be that a data or a chemical or a machine motor, and you're not tailoring your service to how they can go on an on-demand variable environment, you could be at risk. Maybe not today, but it's going to form fast. And we've got these ingredients that are really available to us that's driving a tremendous amount of innovation. We've got modular embedded environments with open source software, a girth of sensors that are at ever-increasing low prices as geometries continue to go down. We've got new capabilities for 3D printing and to be able to get into ideation and prototyping right in your very home or your very lab. And you can prove concepts in software and drive two-way interaction with those things as you're creating your pitch around the business opportunities right inside your enterprise. And we see this a lot. We also have a girth of data and information that's available to everybody around what's out there, what instant feedback and review is around the capability, and it's driving adoption. But big companies are driving some very serious initiatives. And I'm going to talk around where artificial intelligence is going and how quickly it's driving the automotive industry into self-driving cars, what's happening in terms of smart neural networks for security and control and people monitoring, and how the banking industry is now learning from Bitcoin and where the banking industry is actually investing in the blockchain technology that was behind Bitcoin. They're trying to determine what the digital currency and interaction future will look like. But maybe what's even more impressive is the financial elements that are around innovation and companies. Venture capital, just here in the United States alone, we've passed the 10th straight quarter of more than $10 billion being invested a quarter. And half of it is going right into seed or early stage companies. Now, it's not all going into tech, but it's still about 15 to 20%. There's a lot going into biomed and other areas. But what also is impressive is what's happening in crowdfunding. This was the year, 2015, that crowdfunding overtook angel investment as a source of funds. Over $35 billion globally in 2015. And if you just go to Indiegogo alone, and you look at the top 10 projects that were funded in the tech section of Indiegogo, those top 10 projects secured over $15 million of funding from people just like us, right here in this room. And then you take a look at what's happening in education. It's getting increasingly specialized. And you have universities that have been for some time really honing that specialization. And robotics is one area, and I list some of the leading universities here that are really doing some remarkable things and how they're going to start creating industries right around them. In fact, they already have. And if you just take a look at what's happening in Boston and Massachusetts alone from robotics, probably outside of Japan, it is the leading area for robotics innovation. And incubators. We now are spending a lot more time right inside incubators, and every major city has at least one. Often they have 2 or 3, and they're increasing their specialization. And they have anywhere between 200 to 300 early stage companies that they're incubating. 500 Startups is an entity that's really worth looking at, and if you haven't checked their website, they've already claimed that they've helped over 1,500 companies and over 3,000 founders. And I know that they've made investments in almost 100 inside the last 12 months alone. And data is just getting ridiculous. I mean, there's a lot of it. And a lot of it is consumer driven as we stream more and more video and music and content and photos. But business data is growing fast. And we're now starting to figure out how to use it. And the companies we're working with are really figuring out how to use it. It's going to be mind-boggling if you think 18 zeros is big. Wait until you see what's coming. Gartner has made this quote famous, and it's starting to come through. I've been in the embedded and semiconductor sector for years. And if you take a look at now where startups and early stage companies are driving technology, out of last year, almost $80 billion of a $360 billion semiconductor industry is now going towards startups and early stage companies. That's incredible. And it's very diverse. And AI is already here. And it's becoming maybe that magical technology that's we're allowing into our homes, that we're comfortable because it's hiding in the background. If you take a look at Amazon and the Echo and you see what's happening with chatbots and how interactive that's becoming, if you take a look at what companies like iRobot have done to continue to bring robotics into our home because it's functional, they're serving a purpose and they're doing it really well. Where drone technology, right in Colorado, the Air Force Academy is right down the road. And I've been lucky to be able to go and visit the Air Force Academy. Pilots are becoming a very rare breed. But when you go there, you will actually see lines, 20, 30 guys in a room, all starting to practice and train on drone piloting. And when you take a look at where the financial sector has gone with high-speed trading and financial analysis, what that means for the future of the broker industry, and what's happening inside industrial robotics as it grows. It's also forming really fast. Medical is really bringing AI in terms of predictive learning. What's happening now that we're getting exposure to our DNA strands, doing some predictive analysis in terms of your DA profile versus what your health is going to look like, and recommended treatments that are preventative rather than, cure. As environmental pressures continue to grow, air quality, water quality, other things are really starting to come into AI, and they're doing modeling around environments and temperatures. And as precious resources in the future, water is going to be a commodity that's going to be probably traded and monitored. And obviously the driverless car is significant. But what's even more exciting is technology is really advancing in how it's serving a purpose. I joke here a little bit about, hey, hopefully we'll get beyond the paper-based signage. I'm sure companies like Daktronics are going to move as they're quick. Their solutions are excellent. But you take a look at this. I mean, I'm really enamored with what the Cure Paralysis Now Foundation is doing to try and get paraplegia and quadriplegia a thing of the past. And if you visited our SAM car, you'll see what we've started to do to bring in semi-autonomous driving to give driving experience back to a quadriplegic race car driver. But this is a really great example. Look, STEM research and biomedical capabilities are not moving as fast as they should be to cure these conditions. But technology is stepping in. And if you take a look at Steve Sanchez, who was unfortunately severely injured in a BMX accident for $40,000, and in a half an hour, he was able to regain his mobility with the help of SuitX. And this kind of technology is making a fantastic difference in people's lives. And the power of your mobility to get that back is exceptional. Sensing technology, control, balancing mechanizations are really what's making all of this happen. So what's driving these breakthroughs, and why does it feel like that it's really starting to accelerate? It's because big business is driving it, and companies like us and you are trying to figure out what those breakthroughs will look like. And there's a sense of urgency, and here's why. We're lucky as a company to be around since 1935, and we went public in '47, and we're a Fortune 150. But you take a look at some of the statistics. Half of the Fortune 500 companies since 2000 are no longer on the list. Ray Wang does a really good job in talking about some of the things that have changed in business models that have forced that to come, and he keeps us honest relative to what he's doing. This survey from KPMG is already getting a little bit dated. It came out towards the end of 2014. But what's very clear is big companies and industry recognizes that they're under threat. Over a third of them are planning fundamental changes in their business model. They view that they're going to be competing with companies that they never competed with before, and a very high percentage of those companies are seeing that happen, almost 2/3. And yet they also are planning to move into sectors that are adjacent to theirs that they never participated in, and they're starting to move R&D funds and go-to-market models to try and take business in that space. Growth is a requirement that's going to continue to move this along. So what's the advice we would give you outside of that? There are 3 things and actions that we're finding that successful companies are doing more and more. They're reimagining their business model, and they're learning from their customers how they would like to do business, and they're introducing more flexibility into that. They're realizing the value of the data and how customers are learning organizations around how their in companies are interacting, using, benefiting from their technology, and then they're tailoring their support models, their service models, and the experience around those product sets. And then they're also retooling their workforce to be able to deliver that experience faster and better than it's ever done before. Be that with people and capabilities like data sciences and mobility and user experience, but also automation, robotics, intelligent controls. So how far out are we talking here? Where is this at right now? I'm going to flash through a bunch of data. Everybody has been talking about billions and trillions, and it's going to be in there somewhere, and billions excite us and should excite us all, but it is coming fast. And there is a collective wisdom coming from GE to Forrester to others that are indicating directionally it's going to be somewhere between $1.5 and $2 billion of additional value to our economy and GDP over time. And if you take a look at industries and segments, we now have 5 or 6 technology segments from transportation to automotive that's investing over $100 million in IoT deployment right now and today. And robotics is doubling every 5 years in terms of the value of that sector, and it's now a $60 billion industry. And data has ballooned literally in size. And if you take a look at how much have shifted from on-premise to now what's in the cloud, it's very clear the shift that's occurred. And we've probably gotten accustomed to this stat that 90% of the data has been generated in the last 2 years. But again, if you believe what Constellation Research is indicating and forecasting, holy cow, we'll have, and I think this is still a little bit rich, but 90% of the data generated inside 1 second by the time we get to 2020? Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's 5 minutes. I mean, we are absolutely looking at a tremendous shift in terms of what's happening to a data-driven economy. And here's how data is being put to use and how traditional companies are working very hard to catch up. This is an example from the automotive industry. And if we take a look at autonomous cars, Google, in the space of a year, have already had over 420,000 miles of self-driving car data coming in. Out of that period, they only had 341 software interrupts or where there was driver discomfort where they had to engage into a manual process. Imagine when they get this up to 2-3 million miles and how much data and learning they've got. We can already see where the gaps are relative to the rest of the industry who are now jumping in and are buying companies and investing to catch up quick. And they will. But I think this reinforces too is when now you see the big automotive brands coming in, inside the next 10 years, we're going to have an autonomous driving experience. You can have one today in Tesla, even though they tell you you shouldn't. Be careful. But you can have one, and it's coming really fast. 10 years may actually be way too long, in my estimation. Companies like Uber, who are forming alliances with car companies, it gives us a very clear indication of maybe where their business roadmap is going to go. And when we see robotics, again, real practical demonstrations, Kiva, who was acquired by Amazon, are really enabling the shaping of logistics in the modern warehouse and how that's going to go. And these are capable of lifting, hundreds and thousands of pounds of pallets and bringing it directly to the collecting agents who were then packaging it and getting it out. Maybe they won't get it out via drone just yet, but they're certainly enabling robotics in the warehouse. And if you take a look at Merrill Lynch and the forecasts they're putting around They now view that AI and robotics is going to be a $150 billion industry by 2020, and that it's absolutely growing at probably a 20% CAGR rate. And these are some of the other analysts' expectations. They're all forming consensus really fast. And this brings investment. This is where we now see a new breed of companies that are benefiting from venture capital and angel investment. And while it's in early stages around machine learning, we're also starting to see AI go into security for facial recognition, for biometric and medical analysis, what's happening around speech recognition and those speech robots that we're going to incorporate into our homes. But you're already starting to see specialization inside AI. And when you look at some of the biggest investors, Intel is right at the top of the list. Compute functions is still going to drive this capability. And Intel and others are forming fast. I mentioned 500 startups. This is an incubation company that's investing and supporting early stage companies, but they're betting big in terms of artificial intelligence and how that's going to meet automation. And look at how big the ecosystem has already become. It's probably only a year or two since we were looking at an ecosystem that was becoming very robust in IoT. This is a clear branch that's forming out of IoT, and it's forming quick. And as companies are learning how to use data, well, we're also seeing companies that are moving quickly in to monetize data and how it become a very automotive predictive response inside the company. So in the few minutes I've got remaining, I wanted to bridge it back to very practical things that we're involved in and what we're seeking to do. I like this quote. It's from a skateboarder, but it's, I'm not one. But it does underscore you got to make a start. And if you take a look at where your business is, don't worry, you're not too late. Companies ask us all the time, boy, we think we're close in our definition. We're about to go and invest. Are we doing the right thing? And we take them through practical options based on where their budget and their investment is, and we take a look at good, better, best solutions because we've got the benefit. Arrow has the benefit of being surrounded by great companies and partners. We're in the middle of the technology set. And with that, we can guide what's the right practical steps to get on your roadmap. We've been around since 1935, and we've seen our fair share of change. We started, and our main product to sell back then was the vacuum tube, where radio was the killer app. And we had a little store in Radio Row in downtown Manhattan. Radio Row was later abolished because that was the site where the World Trade Center was built. But our company is now global, and we view it our mission to partner with companies to help guide them through this transition. And that's why we launched Things Evolved as our messaging platform, our system, and our blueprint for IoT execution. And where we work from the sensory edge through the embedded layer, the data gateways, up to the data platforms, the connectivity pipe. It's not a very glamorous term, but I sometimes call as the plumber of IoT. We bolt the necessary pieces together to give you the infrastructure to go and succeed. And when you look at that, we can work in a modular fashion around the design, integration, manufacture, but also how we can help you with the operational layer through that data collection, data platform. And our Things Evolve story has two components as an enablement layer. Arrow Connect, which is really allowing the right protocols to come back up through your system to the gateway for aggregation. And then Arrow Insight, which allows us to monitor that data. Arrow Connect brings that protocol to API junction where we're helping bolt up to any data platform that you're seeking to deploy. And where we can also bolt down from what your IT department has indicated it wants to do. And Insight allows us to work with customers around warranty, break fix, eyes on, and how we will work with companies to get new reality, augmented reality for the repair person, the service person to be able to put their eyes on any given situation. And our professional services are there to assist and how we work from that design to integration and manufacture, and obviously put working capital solutions around that for you. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the week.